Hello, and welcome to Season 5 of the Fresh Finds Podcast, the show about discovering new music with good people. I'm Ryan, and this episode I'm joined by Skylar of Cyborg9k. How are you doing, dude?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice Saturday. We just had a lot of snow last night, but it's really pretty out now, so, How about yourself?
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of snow. I'm in Nashville, and we had our first snow of the year yesterday.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. I have this little four-wheel drive car, so I was having fun. I was totally fine, like with all the roads. I liked there was no traffic. It was great. Me and my friend drove around and had a great time.
It's funny, I grew up with a lot of like lake effect snow and everything. And so I'm really used to driving in the snow. And so I see people down here who aren't used to it as much. They got these big four-wheel drive vehicles, and I'm just like absolutely cruising past them in my little like front-wheel drive car.
Yeah. Well, better a front wheel than a rear wheel drive.
Oh, 100%. I had a rear-wheel drive car before, and it was so much worse.
Yeah, mine goes from rear to four-wheel drive. I have a little Subaru, so I'm totally fine with the snow.
Nice. So do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and the music that you make and just kind of give us like a little bit of background?
Yeah, of course. My name is Skylar. My main music project is Cyborg9k right now. It is not the first project by any means that I've done, but it's the first one that has gotten like any sort of real attention on the internet. I like to make, guitar kind of somewhat pop music. It's always hard to describe what kind of music you make as yourself versus like a listener. But it's I've been recording for a long time now, since I was 13 years old, and I'm 27 now. So I've been consistently recording for 14 years on like DAWs.
So we're right about the same age then.
Yeah. I am
nice, right on.
I'm 27, and soon it feels like I'll be 60, like tomorrow at the rate everything goes now. But
yeah.
For now, I'm still in my 20s, and I'm gonna enjoy that for the next 3 years until I can no longer say that. So
as long as you can, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, you started Cyborg9k, it looks like, from what I can tell, around 2019, right?
Yeah, the earliest stages of it were in 2019. The first actual release, I think, was late 2020.
Okay.
With the first, like, EP. But the beginnings of what would become that project were from 2019. Though there are some songs that were written as far back as 2015, 2016. There were a few that were, ideas I'd had in my head for a while. But yeah, the project itself is, I would say 2020 is like the official start, but the embryo kind of existed a little bit earlier than that during some of my previous projects that I had right before that.
And then speaking of other projects, you also, not last year now, but the year before, 2023, had the Huachuca Aerostat project as well.
Yes.
And that seems like it was only like for the 1 year, and then you went back to the Cyborg9k. Like when you're writing music, do you feel like those two projects are like different, and like when you're writing a song you can tell that one's for one and one's for the other, or is it just kind of like based on vibes?
Yeah, I wanted to do something like outside of Cyborg9k. I wanted to try like a bit more of like a out there kind of sound, as opposed to the more like pop structure sort of focused, like very, especially recently, like acoustic guitar focused kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was just something that I noticed. I was like listening to it. I was like, I feel like the Huachuca Aerostat stuff is kind of more like that felt like it was more kind of like electronic focused, not like electronic music, but it like utilized a lot more synths and like auto-tune and things like that.
It was experimental,
whereas
for sure.
Especially the newest album that you put out, what was that called? Days Become
Years. Yeah.
Days Become Years, yeah. Like that is a lot more like acoustic and almost like folky in a way.
Yeah, I've gotten really into that sound recently. The next project that I'm working on is probably gonna continue down So I think Cyborg is going to continue down that sort of path for the foreseeable future.
Nice. It is kind of interesting. I don't know, just the name Cyborg9k and doing like a lot more like less digital, more like acoustic type of stuff. I find like the juxtaposition of that kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It did start as like matching, like the very early stuff I did was like it sounded like robot music. I could hardly play guitar, so it was very much just like drum machines, synth bass. But every release, I've kind of wanted to, I've gotten more and more into the idea of pure songwriting and trying to focus on that and streamline the rest of the process to allow me to put stuff out like quicker and more efficiently. That's kind of where a lot of the acoustic stuff started. Was I can mix the acoustic guitar, basically the same way, like every time to get a cohesion. I don't have to like try to sound design synths all that much, and I can focus on really writing these songs themselves rather than getting lost in the production and the like engineering of the tracks, because I do all that myself as well. So
that's so interesting. I never would have even thought of that as a reason to go in the acoustic direction. It's like you really don't like even electric guitar. There's so much that you can do with like what amp do I want to use, what pedals do I want to use, this, that, the other thing. It's like in acoustic guitar, this acoustic guitar sounds this way.
Yeah, and I have a really
good instrument
one,
sounds this way. Well, and I noticed that also like as well as the acoustic guitar, you also had some banjo, I think. You also had, what was the kind of like Eastern sounding instrument on Child of Texas?
That is, it's on a lot of them. I actually have it over here. I can show you.
That would be awesome. Yes.
I have a lot of like random little instruments. Okay, let's So
this is what I'm here for.
these are my cigar box guitars. This is a cigar box guitar with a resonator inside it.
Okay.
And it's a little sharper, but also it's a bigger one, so it gets a little bit like lower.
Almost getting into like the baritone range a little bit.
It's like a baritone, like high bass, but with the timbre and the harmonics are a little like sharper.
Sure.
This is like the lead cigar box guitar. Instead of a resonator, it has actually like some very basic like tone knobs, and both of these have like electric outputs. And so I take these and then I run them through like pretty heavy saturation and distortion to give it that sort of it's like a very warm kind of filling sound for the mix. I've found that even on the songs that don't like focus it, I use it on basically every single one.
Just because it helps fill out like that frequency range a little bit.
Yeah, and it kind of I use it as like a drone where I play like one of the strings basically, and then the other two just kind of I tune individually to each song.
So that's how it kind of gets that like almost sitar similar type of sound, is because it's got the one that's playing the lead and then the other two are just kind of like drone strings.
This is this is the main one that sounds like that. This is an Appalachian dulcimer. It is tuned. I can actually
nice. Okay.
I can play these two are like a third, I believe, a measure. No, it's a fifth. It's like a perfect fifth, and that's an octave. So with this one, you can just like. It has this like real nice.
That's so sick.
Yeah, and I'll sometimes use this the slide too, so you can like. Like I grew up as a little kid.
That's so rad.
I love I live in Nashville, and when I was a little kid, I lived here. I moved to Arizona, then moved back, but I really like
Okay.
Appalachian kind of like folk music, that kind of sound. And
Yeah.
I had these lying around my house forever, so I wanted to start using them. In addition to more traditional instruments, I have a banjo that is broken. It only has 3 strings, and one of the frets on top is like busted. It's like cracked where it holds the string. So
Oh.
I also had to tune that creatively to get it to sound okay. Then I have a little
Okay.
mandolin too that is featured sparingly on that one. All these are going to be they're a lot more present on the one I'm working on right now. But
Nice. I
the
got a
mandolin,
mandolin a couple of years ago, and it's really fun. But the only thing I don't like about it is I've got like really fat
yeah,
fingers,
it's
and the
annoying.
frets are so small. Like
It is. It is a pain. It's still like I'm not competent enough at it to use it as like a focal point of the song. I normally will
yeah.
record it like just to give like a little bit of like it has a sparkly kind of sound, you know, like the
Well,
mandolin has
because it's naturally like a chorus, basically, because
a
all of the doubled strings. It's the same thing as like a 12-string guitar.
yeah, it's a chorus, and rather than sitting around like the bulk of the sound being around that like 3 to 500 sort of like mid range, a lot of the sound like really pops at around like the when you start getting into the thousands, naturally kind of
Yeah.
it fills out that like 2 to 5K range like real nicely without trying, which is kind of the range I always kind of have like the upper mids or
Hmm.
the lower highs, like in that transitional sort of range. Kind of I've always had the hardest time figuring out what to do with that. So a lot of these instruments really help with that. They all I found they all work together like really nicely, just coincidentally enough that I don't have to do a lot of mixing when I use them. I just have to pan and like turn the volumes up and down a little bit. I really don't have to wrestle with them at all.
Well, and that's something that I've always kind of like heard people talk about is that like the best way to mix a song is to arrange it well.
Mhm.
Because well arranged songs don't really need a whole lot of mixing, and that's like exactly what you're getting at, which makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's been very as someone who's been like trying to wrestle with all that stuff for over a decade, like just trying to
Yeah.
get it. And with
It's just
how
so intuitive.
yes, it's like compared to the Huachuca Aerostat stuff, which was more of just an experimentation of like how many different like random sounds I could put into a pop song.
Hmm.
Coming from that, which was extremely hard to try and mix, to this kind of sound, it's like I can write a song and get it finished in like a few days. Like
That's so sick.
compared to how long it used to take me. Most of the waiting to get stuff out is writing the lyrics and coming up with a vocal melody and an idea for what I
That's
want to
also
talk.
so real.
Yeah, yeah, not even writing the lyrics. It's like coming up with like what do I even want to sing about on this track? Like
Yeah.
what
What's
does
the
this
vibe
want?
of
Yeah,
this?
what does this
Yeah.
like naturally want to be about? Like I could just put some random vocals over anything, but that's no fun. Like you want these like nice instrumentals. You want to bring out like their potential rather than just singing some whatever comes to mind over them.
So going back to those instruments a little bit, because I am curious,
Yeah,
like
of
where did
course.
you find like the cigar box guitars and stuff like that? Because that's so unique, and like you don't find that at just like a music store typically.
No.
Maybe out in Nashville because there's like a lot more of like a country scene. Maybe
Mhm.
you could find them more, but
So my dad actually got like all of these. I was living in his old house. I was paying the mortgage on it because he moved to a different house. So I took over his old mortgage, and there was a lot of like stuff he had just bought that was like left here, like in the attic and crawl spaces and stuff.
okay.
So as through the years I was living here, I ended up finding a lot of these that he was using for decoration, really, to hang on the wall. I remember them being here when I
They
was
do look
a kid.
cool.
Yeah, they look very cool. And I never thought about like actually playing them for the longest time. It didn't like cross my mind because I wasn't making that type of music as like, a teenager when I first moved here. But eventually I think I went to get I had a chord organ that was sitting in my closet, and I was like, oh, let me take that out.
Okay.
And so the chord organ sounds on that are a real chord organ as well. And then I was like, wait, I have a tambourine too I could use. Like I stopped using it for a while, but I could use it, and these little shakers. And then I was like, oh, hold on, there's this like cigar box guitar I know is somewhere or it was a banjo first. I knew there was a banjo somewhere, and then I kept just like looking around and remembering like new instruments that like I knew I had seen around here, and now there's like a dozen just like random little things, different electric guitars. There's one of these cigar box guitars somewhere that has like a license plate. It's made out of like an Ontario license plate. Um,
That's amazing.
There's this one with like this one's very strange. I've never used it, and it's not even tuned.
Whoa.
But it has like three like different sets of strings. So it's not tuned at all.
Yeah.
And it comes out of tune extremely easily. And the way to tune it also, there's like these little pegs. You have to like get like pliers and like turn it.
Whoa.
But maybe I'm gonna use this on these ones I'm working on now, probably.
It's almost like a Floyd Rose bridge a little bit with like how you have to tune it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that it sounds like strange and not standard. And yes,
that's so cool.
This is also strange and not standard.
Well, and you also just get like a lot of like cool textures and stuff out of like that kind of instrument.
Oh yeah, I'm very much like I've taken the texture pill recently. I really like I try to find a place for every single one of these instruments in the new songs I'm making. Now I'm not going to force it if it doesn't need to be there, but from what I've found with the style I've leaned towards, there's always like a place for them.
Okay.
I kind of write songs with the idea that I'm going to be using these in mind, and from the get-go, I've found that regardless of what instruments you have, you mentioned before that it's in the arrangement. I've found that if you do your prep work and you think about like what's gonna go into this song, like what do I want this to kind of sound like, and you start writing the song with that in mind, I have found that is a much like more streamlined kind of process for getting a finished product out than the standard way that most people, myself included, do, which is to just start with a riff or something and just add stuff like as soon as you think of it, which is very fun, but it's very easy to kind of get lost in the sauce, I've found.
Oh, 100%. And just like add a whole bunch of stuff that like doesn't really add anything, or like is all in the same frequency range, and so you have to do like a ton of EQ carving and stuff.
No, I've found that if I need more than like on the EQ, if I need to do more than like take out like below the 100 for like high instruments, maybe up to the 2 to the 400 for like high percussion and stuff. Or if I need to do more than just add like a little shelf around like 9-10K, like by a few decibels, then something else is the problem and not the EQ. I very rarely like EQ for more than like 20-30 seconds on anything.
It's really funny because I've actually gotten into like a lot more of kind of an intuitive thing with like my mixing and arranging and stuff like that with the stuff that I do as well. And I think it really does come down to like there's kind of like a bell curve almost of like starting out barely EQing anything because you don't know what it does really. So you don't know how to utilize it very well. Then you kind of get to like the tip of the bell curve. And that's kind of where, like, you start just doing, like, tons of bands, and you're, like frequency hunting,
you're
and, like, taking out, like, really narrow notches and shit. And then you kind of get back down the hump, and you're like, no, if it needs this much work, I just need to arrange it better.
Or record it better, yeah. Or play it better or something. A lot of the time.
Because, I mean, that's the other thing, too. Like, microphone choice, like, affects things a lot, too.
Yeah, and also the performance itself. I know it's like, that's the worst when, like, you write this super hard piece, and you think you get it, and there's just, like, a little bit of, like, maybe you're hitting the pick too loud, and you're trying to EQ that out, and it's like, the hard pill to swallow is you just gotta like scrap that recording and do it again. Like
100%. Yeah,
it sucks. You take like say like 30 minutes straight just doing this little part, and then you think you got it, and it's just like you're wrestling with it so much. It's like, no, you just need to like go back out of the box and maybe like maybe if you're using effects out of the box, maybe there's too much of something on it. Maybe your tone in that recording is just like irreconcilable, syllable. I don't know how to say that word. I've only read it. But
Yeah.
maybe it's just like you need to create new source material because
That's why I always record a DI too, just in case
yeah,
you need just like a different tone or
exactly.
whatever.
I almost
Yeah.
always record everything completely dry. Like every single instrument I do, I record with like plenty of headroom, like no real effects or anything on it. With my guitar, I record an electroacoustic as well. Like I plug it in, and then I also have a mic on the fretboard, like
Yeah.
around at the same time. And
Like around the 12th fret, somewhere around
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Depending on the song, and that normally just having that like really clean image of like that clean dry image of your thing that you've played is infinitely better for you in the long run than starting out with this really cool sound and you record it and it looks like a brick wall like in the
Yeah.
recording. It's like there ain't
Yeah.
much you can do with that. You need a lot less
It-
effects than you think you do. I've found.
That's so true. I've also noticed like even when dialing in like traditional guitar tones and stuff like that, I'm like I am turning the bass on my amp down so much now because I've realized that like you want the bass guitar to be taking up that range. Like all that's going to do is just make it muddy basically.
Yeah, yeah. The more that you can like do out of the box before you're even messing with EQ, I've found
Yeah.
the better it works. Yeah, if you know that you don't need like 80 hertz and below on your like lead guitar or even your rhythm guitar, you can, cut that. Maybe if you're not gonna cut it like all the way out, still you can lower it by like 10, 15 decibels just to like
Yeah.
save yourself a little bit of work later.
So another thing that I find really interesting about you and your music and kind of like the way that you approach like promoting it is the way that you present yourself online, specifically like on Twitter and stuff like that. Like it's very, very kind of shit posty and like kind of has this like to me it almost has this like Tumblr era like aesthetic to it a little bit, like especially with like the Cyborg9k like character that's like a drawing and like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, it's really just because like I don't know, like I didn't grow up with social media or even a phone. Like I didn't have a smartphone until I was 19 years old. So
Okay.
that knowledge of how to like actually navigate like a digital space properly is not there, but I know that as an artist, like it's important that people know who you are and can like pinpoint like your music with like they remember that you exist constantly, so I mean I'm unmedicated bipolar, so a lot of that too is just like
Okay. Sure.
a lot of that too is like straight up just like me like kind of going crazy on the internet and just like I don't think about what I post. I have like if I think it's like a really dumb or silly thought, I just like tweet it and forget about it. So yeah, I don't follow the traditional like internet sort of like playbook mostly to the detriment of myself, but it's fun. I find it silly, and certain people do like there's a certain type of person who grew up during that era and in those sort of online spaces where that was like that's how I was socialized on the internet, the like forums like Tumblr, like YouTube comment
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I also think that like it's like a fun in the same spirit of like people who they like to like shit post and troll people on the internet and stuff, and they're kind of mean. I try to have some of that spirit but without like the negativity and without some of the like the malice that's behind it, and just leave like the fact that like I think the internet should be a place to be silly and have fun and not take yourself too seriously.
It kind of reminds me of like a Gen Z version of like what Bill Murray is doing for their music with like the very shit posty kind of deal, and like even down to like you talk about like weightlifting and stuff like that a lot, and they do a lot of that too. Like I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, these are actually kind of similar approaches to like promoting music in a way, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think it does, make some people like curious as to like what could this person's music possibly sound like. And then I think it's even better like the fact that the music is like very different from
Yeah.
I put a lot of actual thought into like my music and what I sing about, and I try to sing like very genuine songs. So I think it's
Yeah.
funny. I think it's funny to like portray yourself as like this silly, like nonchalant kind of guy, and then people like
And
listen
then be
to the
very
music.
sincere in your art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that that angle quite a bit. I think that, and a lot of people have told me they find it very interesting, that they've really connected incredibly with the stuff I've made, and they just think it's so funny that like I'll just post like at like 3 a.m. I'll post something about like skibbity toilet or like
Yeah.
something like that. Like I love internet culture. I love like all sorts of internet weirdness from all like aspects of it. I think it is very like it's kind of like the new version of like like scenes, like, as I'm sure like a lot of people are aware, like versus back in the day there was the New York sort of like CBGB scene with like television and talking heads
Yeah.
and stuff, and you can go to the what was that? I don't remember what the scene was, but it was in like North Carolina or something with like Archers of Loaf and Super Chunk and Ben Folds 5 and stuff. Like all these little like
Oh, yeah,
local,
yeah, yeah.
all these like local sort of like scenes that have their own sonic identity and like also like personality to them, and like the way they portray themselves to the world. And I think that the internet is a similar sort of compartmentalized little space, but it's a lot easier to be able to like to explore like other little spaces. Like I can
Oh,
explore, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I love going from talking to people on like the Twitter like DIY scene to like some of the like furry music scene to like some of the like people who make like breakcore and like more Discord like kind of stuff. It's very
I
fun to kind of
I
like.
feel like instead of being regional, like in the world, it's kind of like whatever your pocket or corner of the internet is
Mhm.
is kind of like basically the same thing. And then, of course, you do still have the physical world, the bands that are around you playing
Yeah.
live, whatever. But I do think that it's interesting that there's kind of like that secondary thing of like your own pocket of the internet, basically.
I think we're very fortunate to live in this sort of like very, very tumultuous time in a lot of ways, but through like the way the internet is and hopefully will continue to be, well, that'll remain to be seen the way things are going the last few years with, changes in algorithms and AI, like curation and stuff. So hopefully that doesn't kill like the beauty of the internet, but
Yeah.
all these little spaces that you're born too what is it, born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the galaxy, but you're born just
Yeah.
in time to like play on the computer. Like I love playing on the computer.
It really is so real.
Yeah, I love playing, talking to my friends on the computer all the time. I'm like always like doing something since I do music, and I don't have like an actual job. I do Instacart and stuff to make money, like gig work, and then I get money
Oh,
from music
gotcha.
and merch. So I am always trying to stay tapped into like what's going on the internet. I don't want to be, now that I'm 27, I'm gonna be 28, 29. I don't want to be like the old person who doesn't know what a skibbity toilet is, or like doesn't like keep up with like whatever the newest like shit posts, like little shared like videos and stuff are on Reels or TikTok or anything. Like I think it's very easy to dismiss stuff like that as stupid, like Gen Z is, they're dumb, or Gen Alpha, whatever, they have these toilets and these brain rot content. It's like we were like watching the same stuff. We were watching MLG videos on YouTube and
And fucking Charlie the Unicorn and
Charlie the
like whatever
Unicorn.
else.
Yeah,
It's all like
it's
it's
always
all
been
such a
stupid.
fever
It's
dream.
it's always been like silly and stupid, and like I think it's like a really like a beautiful sort of like reflection of like the whimsy that is innate in the human spirit. And
Yeah.
I think it's important not to get not to forget that, and not to think that like the kids are just into like dumb shit now, and like we were the last like normal generation or whatever. Like no, like it's always gonna be this way. It always has been. Like
Yeah.
it's an extension of like absurdism, which is like comes from that whole like postmodernist sort of. It goes all the way back, and it's not going to stop. So you might as well continue to engage with it, if you appreciate art. I think that like memes and stuff are art, shit posting is art, everything is art, and anything humans express is art. So it's kind of our responsibility to um, go into everything with like a sort of sense of like earnest and like respect, even if no matter how silly it seems to just that's a very long tangent on like the way I post on Twitter. Like it seems
Yeah.
it seems just like stupid or whatever, but there is meaning behind it and methodology, you know?
No, but like I mean, I even saw something a while back that was like basically talking about like the different eras of like online meme culture
Mhm.
and being like, oh yeah, this is kind of when like online memes went postmodern, and then this is like when it got to like being absurdism. And like it was really interesting seeing like seeing somebody treat it the way that traditional art gets treated, in the way that it's like
Yeah.
the way that people are like thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's like things move so quickly now because
Oh yeah.
like culture is dictated by the spread of information. And when you can instantaneously spread information amongst a large group of people with like the internet, it's going to evolve like so much quicker and like permutate on itself and create these little pockets that like, little buds that grow off the tree that is
Yeah.
like the internet, and then they fall off as a fruit and they're like their own isolated ecosystem now. Like it's super cool. I'm so happy to be alive during this time period where you have all this at your fingertips, like anytime you want, and you can like explore all these different like ways of looking at the world and socializing just by hopping on like a different Discord server.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And speaking of like that online community, like that's also kind of how you got into the For Once in My Life split collab thing.
Yeah.
That was the most recent thing that you put out with Full Blown Meltdown and the Acid Flashback at Nightmare Beach. How did that kind of come together?
So when I think before I was even putting out the Huachuca Aerostat record, I had seen Will's stuff all over Twitter, and I was like, wow, this guy like knows what he's doing with like image and
Yeah.
promotion. Like dude is a genius when it comes to that stuff. He is just a naturally like he is a gifted like socializer and promoter and like just all around like good guy, just without even trying. And I was messaging him and I was like, hey, like I really, I found his music through doing that.
He was the one that introduced me to your music, actually, because he was on the podcast a little over a year ago, and we were just kind of shooting the shit like afterwards, and he was like, "Hey, have you heard this Huachuca Aerostat shit?" and sent it to me.
Yeah, and he's all he just has this like this sort of effortless like ability to like bring people together, and I like admired that as someone who I'm very like analytically minded somewhat, whereas like I'm very much kind of in my own head thinking about all this stuff and not nearly like as naturally gifted as like putting myself out there. I'm definitely more of a tinkerer than like a promoter. And so I
Okay.
was talking to him just a little bit because I found his stuff that I never would have found just by the way he like shared stuff on the internet, and I found a lot of cool stuff through him. And I was getting like tips on like him telling me like, yeah, just go out and do stuff. Like it really like stopped me from being scared of just like talking to new people, and we became like pretty good friends through that. And then like I didn't even try to like show him like my music. Like I don't like to like promote myself in the same way that like I don't want to come off as like I want to get something out of you and your platform and like shove what I've made in your face. I tend to go into things with like wanting to learn from that person. And so I didn't send him my music or even bring up like what it was called or anything. But he just went out of his way to listen to it, and he really liked it from what he told me. And so we were just, and I really liked the stuff he did as well. I mean, Mollify was, I remember
Incredible album.
I was pressure washing my my fence for the first time in forever,
Okay.
When it first came out. And so my memory of that album is I just would listen to it like on loop for a few days, like while I was just slowly like pressure washing this like giant like wood fence around my house. So I remember it like very well. And it was right after I had went through like a breakup with like the first partner I had who had ever like I had ever lived with. Like she moved from like where she lived to my house and was here for like a
Uh-huh.
year and then broke up. So it was like it was a very not necessarily tumultuous, like it wasn't a bad breakup by any means, but it was like a sort of like a new chapter sort of feeling of like
Yeah, for sure.
this is like real adulthood. Like I have, this is my girlfriend, like she moved like across the country and lived there and then it didn't work out and moved back. Like very adult sort of things happening. I wasn't living with like roommates anymore for the first time. I was living alone after she left and I was in this house that I had always shared with like people for the last like 6 years. So I really connected with that album quite a bit. And since then we've just been pretty good friends and both like mutual admirers of each other's work. So him and Lonnie had this idea to do this thing, and Will put it by her to get me on it as well because we were all solo artists and wanted to like
Yeah.
do something like we all understood like the pros and cons of being like a solo artist. It's a lot easier to create like very unique sort of pieces of work because of the limitations and like it's all coming from you so you can do whatever you want. But at the same time, it's a lot harder to play live. It's a lot harder to like tour. It's a lot harder to like do the traditional band stuff if you are just doing it completely by yourself. So we were able to connect over that and just had a lot of fun listening to each other's stuff, trying to like someone would send something and it was like so good. I was like, well, I can't use the one I was going to use now because like this one is like so good. I need to make something that's like that good. And so
a little bit of like friendly competition too.
Yeah, it was like
kind of pushing yourselves to be like as good as you can be.
Yeah, no one wants to have the song that's like, standard deviations worse than like the other people's. Like like obviously, different people are gonna like, like different songs better. And that's kind of ended up like was what happened. Is like there's, with that split, there are a lot of people who like liked all the songs, and then there are people, because they're so different, who gravitated towards like one of the three styles, which was very cool. Very cool sort of like dual purpose little like triple single split thing where it functions as both a very short EP as well as like, three separate singles that like you could like listen to that are all different enough from each other to.
But they're also all cohesive in a way too, which is what I really like, is that like they're so different but they also like make so much sense together.
They do, yeah.
As far as I understand, you also like each kind of like provided input and like did things to each other's tracks, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the all three of us, Will's was the first track, Lonnie's was the second, and mine was the closer. And they were all initially like, just written like by us basically. But then as we, sent them back and forth, like we would do like mainly it started out with like harmonies and stuff on each other's, and then like Will would say like, hey, can you do like a harmony here? And I was like, oh yeah, I also did, I recorded harmonies for the whole thing. So you can just like cut and like use whatever you want.
Choose what you want. Yeah.
So we all sent like a whole bunch of extra stuff as well that ended up being put into each other's tracks. And then they were also all like mixed like again and post and mastered together just for the explicit goal of like making them sound cohesive and like they belong on the same project, making them have that.
And that was all done
by
Tony, who produced Mollify, right?
Yes, and it does have that like
so.
same sort of like sparkly, like really like I love that. I love their production.
The mixes are so bright but not harsh, which is a really hard thing to pull off, because I feel like a lot of people who have really bright mixes, they also just tend to have way too much like information in the upper range that kind of makes it sound harsh.
They can get
and they do such a good job of like making it bright but also like really like pleasant to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that with Mollify when I heard it. I was like, I love just like how it sounds like candy. It's like it's like bright and clean and like sugary, but it's not. It doesn't hurt. It's not like a lightning strike or like a
sugary is such a good way to.
It is.
Such a good
bright,
way to say it.
It's bright and light, but it's pleasant. It's not. it's not like bright to the point where it's like a blinding light in your face. It's just like a nice like I love their mixing like quite a bit. I've tried to, you know, move a little more towards in that direction with like the recent project where it's like a bit brighter, but for the most part, not super distorted. I found that as well. Like highs and distortions, when you put them together, they're really hard to kind of tame. But with acoustic
Yeah.
stuff, you have a little more leeway with like these type of instruments. You can boost a little like the highs of the mandolin and whatnot a little more than you can like a distorted like lead guitar and like hi-hats and whatnot.
100%. That's actually I was actually talking about this just yesterday on Twitter. It's funny, I'm wearing the Pup shirt because the new Pup song, like the first single off of the new album, came out yesterday. And I was like, man, I love this song, but I hate the way that it's mastered because it's like really kind of squished in the upper, like the high end is really harsh. And I think that that's exactly what you're getting at, is that it is like really distorted guitars and they kind of tried to make it like bright and punchy, but it kind of...
Distortion is inherently a compressive limiting like thing. You can't, it is nigh impossible to make a distorted guitar both like punchy and heavy. That's why like the punchy kind of guitar, that like sparkly like emo stuff that you hear, that's very like spiky and very dynamic, isn't normally done with a lot of distortion, you know? There's a little saturation on it maybe, but all those little like twinkly guitar solos are like it's very like
it's closer
clean.
to that like kind of clean fuzz kind of deal, like almost like what like the original fuzz pedals were kind of doing.
Yeah. Like the Rats and Big Muffs and those old kind of, even a little earlier than that, honestly. But yeah, real low, just like a little bit of that like that bite to it, but it's
just enough to start adding that little bit of compression and a little bit of character to it. Yeah, for sure. Man, this has been a good conversation. I've been having a lot of a lot of fun with this.
I love talking about like mixing and stuff because that's like, you know, I know not all there's like some musicians that, you know, they do the music and that's what they focus on in the touring. And like that's what they're really good at, and that is not what I'm good at all. I don't know how to organize a show. I don't know how to plan the logistics of like playing live. People always ask me to play live. It's like I don't know how. I don't know like who I would, you know, even play. I don't even know how to go about like doing that yet. And I'm trying to like talk to people to learn. But when it comes to the songs themselves and like making them,
when I get to nerd out on production, that's my favorite.
Yes. No, I love like all kinds of like production stuff. I've got to a point that I've been doing it so long where I have like especially with the last album, like with the one I'm working on now, I really haven't had to change a lot in the production style. I have started using a little bit of reverb on my vocals now. I was always actually very like minimalist in terms of like reverb. I don't you might have noticed, but I don't use a lot of reverbs or delays on like a lot of my new stuff. It's very much just the playing it itself and where they are in the stereo field and the mix. But I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with
you. I feel like you do enough like harmonies and like other things that like it kind of doesn't stand out as much. Like if you just have a single vocal and it's like bone dry, then you'll notice. But I feel like if you start to have like other like harmonies and like doubles and things like that,
I do a lot.
It's not nearly as obvious that it's super dry because you have other things kind of like working together with it.
Most of my songs, I think I use, normally there are like 5 or 6 different vocal tracks. I have I'll have 2 like Elliott Smith style, you know, where they're both center.
Okay.
And they're both center. One's a little quieter, and they're mixed like very similarly to get that kind of thickening effect. And then I'll have the doubles of that, like panned maybe like 35 out of 50, you know, like versus I don't know. Some people use 100, but on Ableton, which I use, it's 50-50. So like halfway.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Halfway sort of between or all the way, and then whichever one I use, the other one I put the like harmonies on. And then I like to do this trick where, like, for the harmonies in anything, a lot of things really that have like a left and a right, I will send it. I'll use a send, and then I'll put a reverb on it that's like 100% wet, and turn it down pretty low, and then I'll put like a utility plugin on it, and I'll swap it. So the reverb on the right channel is coming from the left dry, and the reverb of the left is coming from the right dry. And
that's really common to do on like electric guitars and like rock music and stuff like that too.
It makes them sound sort of full. And I use that on because I use so little effects. I just make it real quiet and use that on a lot of things to sort of like balance out the stereo field, where like, you know, this one sounds a little different than this one, but the reverbs are swapped. So this one is, you know, they're crossed in a way. And you hear a little bit of each. It really makes it sound like you're kind of in a space where that music is happening, I've found. Like there's a lot of crossplay and sort of bouncing around of like what basically becomes like, you know, the classic like reverb sound, but it's mostly just done with different layers of different things, like panned all around to kind of get that sort of effect.
No, 100%. And I do like that approach to kind of like making something sound more full in that way.
Yeah, rather than just slapping a reverb and a slapback on it and calling it a day. That we've all been there though. We've all, you know, we've all crossed, you know, the bell curve you were talking about. To get to the point of like that minimalist sort of philosophy, you have to understand what everything does and experiment with all of it to like realize that like you don't actually need all of that. But you know when you do need it now. You know like when it will be.
It's learning how to use it as opposed to just using it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, putting a reverb on everything because it, you know, it sounds better because you think you're supposed to. You think everything needs like effects, or it's like amateur. Like you think that the more effects are on it, the more work you're doing and the more professional it'll sound, which often
people get that way with like compressors and stuff like that too. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna throw a compressor on it, and it absolutely like destroys their guitar tone because they think that it needs a compressor. But like you said, distortion already acts as a form of compression anyway, and so a lot of the time I
don't think I've ever put. I mean, I have, but like for the recent like actual like Cyborg Aerostat like kind of stuff, I don't think I've ever like needed to put a compressor on an electric guitar. I look at it, I throw the compressor on it, and it's like already a square. Like, what am I gonna do? What am I compressing? I'm just turning down the volume. I'm not compressing anything. Like if it's already a brick wall, like it's already like here, right? And you put a compressor threshold like here, all you're doing is like turning this down in volume, basically. You're not like doing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you compress it, and then you put like the makeup gain on it, and it turns back up. It's like all you've done is like make it like even like
you've just turned it down and then turned it back up.
Turned it back down and turned it up, and you've lost like even more dynamic range than you already had. Like you've taken 100%. Out like the tiny little bit of dynamic range you still had, and it's like, and then you do that like 10 other times to like every instrument, and it's like you have it's just a brick wall. And like, there are ways to make that sound cool, but I don't think compressing every single thing and putting a million effects and everything is the way to do it personally.
No. So is there anything else that you specifically wanted to touch on or talk about before we move on to sharing some new tunes together?
Not particularly. Like I said, I've talked about a lot of the production, and I've mentioned a few things. So I think it's a good time to, take a break from the nerd talk and, let's hear
I'm sure we'll find our way back into the nerd talk eventually.
Of course. So we can take a break for now.
All right. So I'm going to start out with my song. We're going to go back and forth, which is going to give you the closer. That works for you?
All right.
All right, lovely. So my first song is actually a brand new band. It's their first single that they've ever released. It's a band called Benji Howard, and they are from Kentucky. They've got a new EP coming out in April, and this is the first single that they released, I believe, back in December. Yeah, December 13th. So it's been out for almost a month now. This is called Keeper of the Letdown.
I'm breaking hearts, it's just for show. Can't retract the bullet hole I put through your stomach. My ego is righteous. Forgive and forget. Can you blame me? I guess. But 1 foot on the gas, one inside of my chest. It's a complex reset. Put one foot on the gas, one inside of my chest. It's a complex reset, reversal, request. Can't change who I've been. I let 'em all fucking down in the end.
Oh, who was
Like
that?
that's a band called Benji Howard.
In Kentucky. That's pretty
Yeah.
where I live. I like that a lot. That was their first one they've ever put out.
That's what I'm saying. For like a first release, like they really hit the ground running.
Yeah, I mean that I wrote some stuff that I noticed immediately. So at the beginning that I thought was pretty unique. There's kind of these like swirly, like almost shoegaze guitars at certain parts. I noticed.
Yeah.
Like there's a bit of that, like it's like a flanger or like phaser, but it's like very subtle, like some sort of like interaction going on that sounds like real, like kind of like liquidy and like full, and then it kind of drops into this like Wonder Years-esque kind of, you know, pop like emo guitar slides and like very like articulate like rhythm guitar kind of stuff.
And I love the difference between those two because it's so like soft and lush, and then it just like kind of hits you in the face when it goes into that other part. Like
Yeah.
I love like the balance between those two styles.
The rhythmic variations too were like really cool. I love when songs do this thing where it's like it's like almost like blocks of like sort of like types of rhythm. Like it'll go from like, you know, 4 bars of like the snare on every beat to a fill to a different kind of like standard like, you know, pop punk kind of emo drum, and then like, you know, 8 bars later it'll go into like a halftime sort of like it's very active sort of rhythm, very like it almost seems like very like drum driven, like that song.
It is really cool because I think in all those sections, for the most part anyway, the guitars are playing like the same or a similar riff. And this just makes the feeling of that same riff different because it like interacts with the groove of the drums differently.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a like fun way to arrange things, to just change one thing that changes the way that you hear everything else that stays the same.
Yeah, it's definitely underutilized by myself included. Like it's a very easy thing to forget that you can just do. Like you can just play basically the same thing, and just like play a different drum pattern, or like move the bass note instead of playing the root on the bass. You can move up to like playing like the third or something, and like you can change like the whole song,
or even like move up the octave on the bass or something.
Yeah,
like just play the exact same thing but like up an octave or whatever. Yeah, just like little variations. And that was another thing that I was going to bring up, is like this is another that we were talking about compression earlier, and like the feeling or need to like compress things maybe more than they need to, and especially in modern music that's a big thing that happens. And one of the things that I think you have to be smart about is how you arrange if you're going to be doing that. Because this is still a very dynamic song, but it's super compressed. And all of that is just from instruments dropping out for a section or for like a bar or whatever. Just like these little variations and things that like create the dynamics that are kind of getting squished out in the process of like getting that really loud master.
Yeah, like you can compress stuff, but you have to compress stuff with the arrangement in mind, you know?
With intention.
Yeah, like it's very compressed, but you said things drop out, and it gives like space for it to breathe. Or even though things are hitting that like, you know, that ceiling, like it gives the like almost like the illusion that there's like a lot of dynamics because of the arrangement. Even though even though it stays pretty close to that, it doesn't just assault you with like a brick wall of like guitar like the whole way through. Like there are times where the guitar drops out, where the drums get like quieter and a little slower to like build up. And yeah, I wrote that. I'm gonna based on that first song, I'm probably gonna end up writing all of these down and going back to all of these because that was really good.
Hell yeah. I always try to, I got really bad at it at the end of last year. I need to update it. But I always try to, when a new episode comes out, put all of the songs onto a playlist separately so that you can just go to each season and be like, oh, these are the songs that were featured on this episode.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like that. I'm definitely going back to that.
So what do we have up next?
All right. I'm going to start. So I have a few that are like, I tried to get some DIY like artists that aren't as active on Twitter and stuff, and maybe people might not know of, and like, you know, a little closer to the kind of sound I have, you know, still somewhat like DIY, a little bit like emo influence, but you know, a lot like poppier. But I'm going to start and to lead into that, I'm going to start with a Twitter DIY band that I had never listened to. I saw them recently live in Nashville a few months ago. And
are they a Nashville-based band?
No, I believe they're Cleveland, Ohio, somewhere in the Midwest.
Okay, cool.
But I saw them. It is Manor Gates. I'm sure you
yes.
So I had never heard of them. And
those are my boys.
Yes. I saw them playing live at Arcane Workshop, which is like a venue we have down here in Nashville. And I was like amazed by the like technical proficiency of these guys, like just on their instruments. Like I know those like twinkly guitars, you know, like I can't even do that. But not only was this guy doing that, but he was singing and also playing rhythm and going back and forth between that and rhythm and singing. And it was it looked completely effortless. Like I was like, this is not a backing track or anything. Like I saw his fingers. They were just like wasn't even trying.
They do play to tracks. I do know that, but yes, he's absolutely doing all of that shit live too. It's like a doubles or like other parts or whatever.
And there were the backing tracks, and it was so impressive because it was like on the tempo. It was like locked in to that like track, like that little like that super hard lick. Like I could hear the difference. Like it's a slight difference in tone between the live and the backing track. And it just blew my mind. So the song
they are
I've chosen,
rock solid.
Yes, the song I've chosen is their, I believe their most recent one, Type 3 Fun.
Hell yeah!
I think that's the one I saw live, and I was a fan immediately when I saw that. It was very cool. So we're gonna listen to that. I just wanna say. Floating around, looking at the floor.
Oh my God.
Great song. That's definitely the one I heard because I remember seeing the singer like playing those while singing like at the same time and just
It's
killing it on both.
insane.
I was like, wow, like some people are just like really good at their instruments, like so much better than like I am or like anyone that like I know in real life. Like there are people out there who are just like modern day like virtuosos, it looks like. And I was
Every
so
one of
impressed.
those guys are so insanely talented. Like it's really interesting because I have like a very guitar centric background. Like that's the main instrument that I play and everything. But I am always so like drawn to the drums in their songs. Like Jeremy, he is such a like killer drummer. Everything is so like crystal clear and articulate and like just dead on. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like all of their instruments, really. That's a very good way to describe their sort of sound. Like all of it is very like what I noticed even live. It's super like articulated. It's like it's punchy. It's very like it's very accurate for lack of a better word. Like where you think that should be, it's there. Like you couldn't. It sounds like you couldn't like you couldn't take that into like a waveform and like quantize it like and make it sound like any more perfect than it already is. Like it just sounds like they're great. They're great. I was a big fan. I followed them immediately after I saw them live the first time on like everything.
Their production is also crystal clean too.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, I like them a lot. I've gotten more into them in the last like month.
Have you listened to their record too? I assume
I've listened to you're referring to because they don't have a new one out. I don't believe.
No, I'm referring to So Much Brooding.
Yes, I listened to that basically like right after like I saw that show live, like on the way back. Now, granted, I don't have a speaker system in my car, so I only heard it on my phone speakers driving back for the first time, and then I've heard it mainly while I drive. So that's when I listen to music, I do it like while I'm doing like driving and Instacart and stuff. So there are a lot of bands that like I have yet to hear on a proper like sound system
to get the full experience.
Yeah. And that album is one of them. So I actually think I recently got some like bone conductor headphones like in the last week or so to like do while I'm doing like driving around gig work type stuff. So I think I will, since you reminded me, go back and experience that album again with the proper setup so I could hear that mix.
Yes.
Yeah, the from the ones I've heard, the mixing is incredible.
Yes. No, they were telling me, because I had them on an episode a little less than a year ago, but they were telling me that they specifically went to a guy who does like a lot of like production for like what they call butt rock acts, specifically because they know that they can make it sound really big and clean. And that's like a lot of the aesthetic that they were going for, which makes so much sense. I also thought it was interesting listening to this song. This was what introduced me to the idea of type 1, type 2, and type 3 fun, which I thought was interesting.
I've never heard of that. What is type 1?
So it was, I need to look it up. I need to look it up exactly, but it was like type 3 fun is basically stuff that like in the moment maybe isn't like super fun, like it's not something that you would go out to do, but like it makes for really great stories, and like you tend to like look back on those moments in retrospect and be like, oh, that was such a good time. Like examples of it is like getting lost in the woods or something like that. Like as you're doing it, you're like, oh shit, this sucks. Like what if we never happened? But like over the course, there's so much bonding and things like that happen that you look back on it like so fondly, even though like in the moment you may have like almost hated it.
That's why you're doing it. That makes sense. I like that.
It's I just thought that was really interesting. Like that introduced me to that concept because I had never heard of it before.
I like that as well.
All right, so my next song is going to be from a Michigan band that I first saw live the same time that I saw Maynard Gates live. It was the same show, but it's a band called Atticus. They are from Marquette, Michigan, which is way up north in the UP, if you're familiar with the geography of Michigan.
Yeah.
But
look at it. But I plan on like quick tangent. Like at some point, I want to if I can get enough like money just passively with music, I have this like concept where I like want to find these like cheap like little houses in like tiny towns across America and like rent them out like for short, people who will rent them to me for like 6 months. I'll be like, hey, like I'm making money and live there and make like an EP or an album while I'm living in this little small town. Maybe get a job at like a local like gas station or something and get involved in this like community of a town of like a few thousand people, and then make an album inspired by my experience there, and then move on to like a different place and do that for a few years. And the Upper Peninsula is one of the places where I want to do that. I want to live in the Upper Peninsula for maybe like 6 months to a year and like record music and like experience what it's like to
That's such an awesome idea. And it's also really interesting because I have a very similar thing that I would love to do eventually, which is I've always said that like if I won the lottery or somehow came into like a bunch of money, what I would want to do is build a recording studio somewhere in the UP around like Marquette area, somewhere like that, and also like build like a house and just have bands do like residency sessions where they do exactly that, like just kind of like live away like in nature for a while and like produce like an album or an EP or whatever.
Yeah,
it's really interesting that you and I have very similar ideas for that.
Yeah. The Upper Peninsula is one. Like New England, like rural Maine or something is one.
Oh, that would be cool too, like right on the coast.
Yeah, and then North Dakota, I think, is another one because I don't know what really goes on up there. The Plains is another one, and then somewhere either in like NorCal or like Oregon, Washington. Those are the 4 like regions I would like to spend 6 months or so in this little house of a town of like 2 to like 5,000. Just like
I feel like you're almost getting into like a Sufjan Stevens thing of like doing like an album for like different like locations or whatever.
Yeah, so I'm excited to tangent back to the band itself you're talking about. I am excited to hear kind of what's going on in the Upper Peninsula.
So this is a band called Atticus, and this is from their self-titled album, which came out in July of last year. They actually had a run of tapes done through Leave It at That Records, which I also bought, and I first saw them live in April of last year at a show where they came down here. So this is the final track off of that album, and it is called Sensitive.
Calling it sensitive these days, I wonder why. It's over dramatic, too much for an uncomplicated mind. I've always been
Well, another banger, of course. I'm not
Yes,
surprised.
of course.
I'm not surprised. I know. So a lot of that, some of that like songwriting is like pretty similar to some of the stuff I kind of try to go for. There's a certain level of like kind of like poppiness in the sense of like kind of 60s like Sunshine, a bit like Psych, sort of, Beach Boys,
Yeah.
like Harry Nilsson kind of stuff with that like octave style, like kind of bass, like it's very unique in the context of like DIY and the emo stuff.
A lot of stuff from kind of that area tends to be a lot leaning into like kind of indie rock, bordering on like psych, blues, and like a little bit of like power pop. That's kind of like the general mix up there.
I know it's the power pop a lot. I mean, that's my biggest influence is like not in terms of sound design, obviously, but in terms of songwriting. I very much like the power pop kind of style of squeezing all you can out of those like verse chorus like pop structures and kind of getting creative within those confines. I think they make for like catchier songs. Like I can still remember exactly what this song like do 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 like, because of that, like really
all the melodies are just so catchy. They really are.
Yeah, and that's why I love that kind of pop stuff. Like I'm real big into like, the more pure like emo and especially like the Midwestern sound. But the stuff I end up going back to the most in that genre is where they kind of blend like pop sensibilities and like kind of like a bit of like sparkly cleanness to the writing. I like that a lot. I think that emo and DIY and indie kind of lends itself very well to that sort of like I said, 60s, like the association, sunshine pop, jangly kind of sound.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit as well.
I also really like the lyrics on this one because I feel like in the modern age, like they really hit home where it's talking about like being called sensitive for or like oversensitive, over dramatic for like seeing like the atrocities of the world and like and I think that it really is such a thing. I think it's also interesting coming from a female perspective as well, because like oftentimes they are seen as being more sensitive.
Yeah,
like
people just brush off like things women will say, like you're just being sensitive, you're just like
exactly
women, right? It's a very very like established trope.
And so I really like the perspective there of like, no, these are like, this shit is happening in the world. This sucks. I'm not sensitive. This is terrible things that are going on.
Yeah, maybe you need to be more sensitive to stuff. Like
exactly.
Maybe you need to stop being so jaded and like look at what's happening in the world.
I cannot wait to hear what they're cooking up, because I think, as far as I know, I think they're working on new music, and so I'm really excited to see what they have coming up the pike.
Yeah, now I am. I wasn't before because I didn't know who they were, but that's really. Hey, make sure you. Yeah, I need to tap in. You said you have like playlists of like all of these now. Like it's all of them. You said you got worse at doing it, but
I need to update it. But yeah, I have a playlist for each season of the podcast that has like all the songs that have been featured by the guests and myself.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit too.
And again, like I said, another UP band. So if you're interested in that, interested in that, that's the type of stuff that's coming out from this area.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that stuff quite a bit. I'll pick another one too.
What do we have up next?
Okay, I'm gonna the second one also. I'm gonna go with a more classic like DIY emo kind of sound before I get into some stuff that people probably haven't heard of as much. This is a band, you might know them. They're called Dumpster Pussy out of Nashville.
I have heard the name, but I don't think I've actually listened to them before.
Yeah, they're a lot more.
It's an easy name to remember. I'll tell you that much.
It is. They're a lot more of a local like sort of thing. I mean, they're not like super huge on streaming or anything, but I had heard them for the first time a few years ago at a thing we have down here in Murfreesboro, which is like a suburb of Nashville, called Borough Fondo, which is like a yearly little like bike music like hangout festival thing. And
Oh,
then,
that's cool.
And then I liked them. And then I heard, I think they were just starting out back then. I thought it was pretty cool. I was sitting on the grass drinking a beer and like with my bike, you know, like it's kind of the vibe.
Such
it was,
such a vibe.
Yeah, that was kind of what it was.
I'm
There
into
was a
that.
bar, people were drinking, just hey, it was like an outdoor thing behind like a little, like tiny little like brick store, and people were just drinking and like talking and stuff. And I thought it was pretty good. And then I heard them again. They kind of fell off my radar a little bit for a few years. And I heard them again a few months ago at this like brewery. I think it was like a Trans Day of Remembrance sort of thing that I went to, and they were playing, and they had I felt like I remembered them play this song I'm about to play, and it sounded so much more like refined, like, and so much like their sound had gotten really, really, like, it sounded like
just
they
the
were really
growth between those two times was like
they were
massive.
Yeah, and their like stage presence and everything had just elevated so much. And this song had stuck with me when I heard it. I like the songwriting on this a lot, both lyrically as well as structurally. I think they're all very talented, and I think they're gonna get a lot bigger. They're already decently well known around like this insular little like Nashville sort of area. But I feel like as they continue to put stuff out, they're all very talented. So this is Chapter 3 by Dumpster Pussy.
Maybe I'd
I
That
love the
song.
build on that.
It's
Oh my goodness.
it's so good. The way that like it's like it takes so long at that just like only guitar and vocals, and it has that little like build up and drops back down and then just like pops off like halfway through. And
Yeah.
just that like steady like do 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 like guitar riff going all the way through. It's just like that sort of building on that like repetition. It's such like a catchy little lick, and it like I don't know. I every time they play it in that song, I never get tired of it. It's just like such a cool little thing. It just comes out, it drops out, and then he sings some stuff, and then he goes do 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 do. And it goes back again and comes up again, and oh my god!
And
yeah,
then they
it's
all
so good.
hit on the yeah. See, I think that sticking with keeping it stripped back for so long really helps make that when everybody comes in just so much harder, because it's like almost like keeps building tension because it's the same thing over and over and over. And then finally there's like the cathartic release, which I also like is kind of, it happens on a like such a defiant lyric too, if I recall, like that I think is really cool, because like a lot of the introduction is setting up a like kind of doing world building in a way, and especially like knowing Nashville and Tennessee overall being like a more like conservative area and things
much,
like that.
Very much.
The talking about the trans issues and like building all of that, and then the catharticness of like, no, I'm not gonna conform to like what you want from me, is such a great, like the way that the music matches what the lyrics are throughout the song is so great.
Oh yeah, no, it's an awesome song. I mean, that's an emo staple, you know, is matching that like emotional like build up and like hitting to when the instruments like all build up at once. That like harmony between the lyrics and the vocals and the melody and everything, like very very much a emo staple, and they all do it like so well. Like I said, go ahead.
What I was gonna say is I also love like the tones and the production on this too. Like the way that they make that one single guitar sound so like it's nice and warm, but it's also like very enveloping, like with the reverb and the with the reverb and the little bit of delay on it and everything makes it sound really, really nice and full. But it's also like just that single coil, like kind of compressed Strat sound that also a lot of people are playing on humbuckers like a lot of the time in this type of music. So like hearing that single coil, like the little bit of almost twang to it, I really like as well.
Yeah, I think she the guitarist is playing that. I think she also does the like mixing and mastering.
Oh, they're all self-produced?
Yeah, I believe so. I think she does a lot of stuff for like Nashville bands around here. I know she's part of like a few different bands. The person who plays that. So very very talented group of people, and definitely I expect them to keep honing their craft and getting better and better.
Well, and I'll tell you what, like I said, I had heard the name before. I had never listened to them. I'm definitely like, I already saved that EP to my library to listen to later, because this is incredible stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff around like Nashville, it has you mentioned the classic more sort of sound. I've noticed that a lot of the people around here, you don't hear like a lot of like humbucker kind of stuff. You hear a lot more like it's like a little noisier, like a little bit more towards that like twangy, like it's Nashville, so there's gonna be a little bit of that like sort of
there's that little bit of country influence just from like almost like osmosis, like being around Nashville just kind of does that to you in a way.
yeah, definitely. You hear a lot rather than the super clean like runs. You hear a lot more like a lot of bands like a lot of that kind of like kind of stuff, and it's really cool. I love country music, so I really like a lot of the like Nashville DIY stuff that I've heard, because
Nashville's also just such an interesting area, like because I think that I'm fairly well tapped in with like quite a few Nashville bands. Like I know quite a few people, and I know people through people and like that kind of of stuff. And even still, I'm still just finding new bands everywhere because like it's such a, I mean, if you want to do music and you're kind of in that area, you're probably going to move to Nashville. That's kind of the move.
There's a lot of like undiscovered like stuff.
And so it's very saturated, which is kind of a good and bad thing in a way, because like you have so much like potential to be exposed, but at the same time I think that because it is so oversaturated, sometimes that might hurt in the long run as well.
Yeah, I mean I am a lot more known, like a lot more well known on the internet than Nashville. I think like I don't think people in Nashville know who I am, even though like I'm like pretty popular on like Spotify and stuff, like compared to a lot of like bands that are a lot more popular locally here.
Yeah.
And it's more so because I've focused on doing the internet stuff, even though I'm here, because as you said, there's just so much going on. It is really hard to break through in Nashville, like organically, because there's so much talent and everyone's so good. There's so many bands that I've tried to get out to concerts more often now that I have a car that has like insurance and legal registration and stuff. I was driving illegally for like 2 years, and I always got like so scared. Like I just couldn't afford it. And I just I just barely drove. I drove like to the grocery store and back and stuff. So now that I'm able to drive, I feel more comfortable. I live like 45 minutes south of Nashville. So I'm trying to get up there. I'm trying to get up there more often. I live in Murfreesboro, which is, very close, but not quite Nashville.
That's one of the other things that I find really interesting about Nashville is barely anybody who lives there is from there. Mm-hmm. As well as barely anybody who lives there actually lives in the city. Everybody lives like outside. But I was also like, maybe it's also just coming from like the cities that I went to growing up was always like Detroit and Chicago. And like maybe like, we flew out and went to New York a couple times or whatever. And all of those are like really big cities, or even if the city isn't necessarily big, the urban sprawl is very large. Like if you're in Detroit, you have to drive for like over an hour to get out of what feels like the city, even though it's not technically Detroit anymore. Yeah. Whereas, like, that's one thing that I kind of like about Nashville is that the suburbs feel less city-like, which I think is kind of cool.
They are basically, like, attached to Nashville. There is no, like, countryside between them. It's a gradual sort of change, though. Where, like where I live in Murfreesboro, there's like Murfreesboro, which is like very like, suburban feeling. And then there's Smyrna, which like starts to feel a little bit like Nashville, a bit more like a city. And you get to Laverne and it feels even more, it's just like a gradual sort of like going from here to like the city center of Nashville. It's just like before you know it, you're on all these crazy interchanges and you see the city. But it definitely is. It definitely is not just like city and then when you're out. It's like you kind of don't notice
the change. Yeah.
Until you're right there, then you notice all of a sudden like, oh, I'm just in the city now.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's a good time to move on to the next song. This is a currently unreleased song, but it'll be released by the time the actual episode comes out. But this is the first single from the band Great Wide Nothing's upcoming album. They are a kind of like progressive like alt-rock band basically from Atlanta. And they do some really, really cool stuff with like synths and like, just like really progressive song structures and stuff like that. This is the first single off of their new album. The song is called Rules of Engagement, and it comes out on the 24th.
to just sit down at the table where you'll bet your life till you've got nothing left. When will you get it through your head that this is a numbers game? You exchange every moment, you don't get to rest and you don't complain. These are the rules everyone's accepted, so why don't you feel the same? Shut up and play, you've got nobody to blame, 'cause this is a numbers game. What if I won't take that for an answer? And what if I won't swallow the excuse? What if I would rather take my chances? Tell me, what if I refuse? What if I won't take that for an answer? And what if I won't swallow the excuse? What if I would rather take my chances? Tell me, what if I refuse? When will you get it through your head that this is a numbers game? You exchange every moment, you don't get to rest and you don't complain. These are the rules everyone's accepted, so why don't you feel the same? Shut up and play, you've got nobody to blame, 'cause this is a numbers game. When will you get it through your head that this is a numbers game? You're nothing to no one, you'll do what you're told and you'll entertain. These are the rules everyone's accepted, so why don't you feel the same? Shut up and play, you've got nobody to blame, 'cause this is a numbers game. This is a numbers game. This is a numbers game.
That is the last thing I expected to be listening to was a prog rock straight out of 1977 or whatever.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like this, like late '70s, early '80s kind of sound, especially with like all those synths and stuff like that. Kind of like
they really like nailed that sound. I would believe that would be like from that time period. Like they were incredibly like accurate in like what they were going for. That straight up sounds like some like arena like prog rock like ELP type, like everything, the production on it, the playing, like the melodies, like that is so cool. It's like the beginning I was thinking reminded me of like some of the Dreamcast era like Sonic Adventure games a little bit.
Oh, all right, interesting. Yeah.
Some of the like, I know Sega liked to use a lot of kind of like 70s and 80s like influences in a lot of their soundtracks. And some of those synths and stuff reminded me a lot of like, especially
the
like
bass lines kind of remind me of that too, actually, because they do a lot of like the very active, like kind of like almost jazz bass, like
it's
type of
like
stuff.
That Japanese like prog like jazz fusion a little bit. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, and I love that kind of stuff. Like it reminds me a bit of all that whole wave of. I mean, there's so many artists and they all have like Japanese names I'm not like super familiar with, but Cassiopeia is like the big one. People like the Harumi Hosono. I think he's the guy with the surfboard guitar on the cover, possibly. But all that kind of like that prog, like little bit of like city pop kind of bass line like stuff. I was a big fan of that. I like ELP a lot too. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And Yes and Rush, like all the classic like big prog rock bands. And yeah, they did a great job I'm glad that people are still making that kind of music in 2025 now.
Well, and whoever plays the keys, they can shred.
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
The
just going up and down like insane
like
shit.
multiple octave like melody runs.
Yeah.
They have the skills to recreate that. And that's a very hard genre to recreate because it has such a high skill floor to like make it even sound like that at all, let alone like make it sound like a faithful like spiritual successor to like that kind of stuff for like the modern age.
Also, the production is just so massive sounding.
It's huge. It's got that arena sound. It's got that like
it does.
It sounds big and full and like all like in your face, and it's got that glam like hair kind of style to it.
It is. It's almost like you hear it and you almost picture it in a giant arena.
Yeah.
Like
it's like sports montage.
They're a DIY band playing like shows just around like Atlanta in small venues and stuff like that. But you're just like, oh no, they are in a massive arena when they're playing this shit.
Yeah, straight up. That is super cool. It's been a long time. I don't know if I've ever heard like modern like prog, really. I don't think I've ever like gotten into that. And that's really cool. I mean, it makes sense that it's still being made. It's just like I never thought it was.
At least not in that style anyway.
Yeah,
because
like,
I feel like a lot
classic.
of modern prog kind of like goes in more of like the periphery gent kind of like.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
Like the classic like synth driven kind of like traditional prog stuff. I had no idea there were still people out there doing it so well.
And they've got a few other albums as well. They're I forget if I can pull it up. Yeah, they've got 2 albums since 2020 that are both volumes of the same thing. Hymns for Hungry Spirits. They've released Volume 1 and Volume 2 in true prog fashion. This is one of my favorite things. Volume 2, which came out in 2023, it's a 41-minute album with only 5 tracks, the final track being 20 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Like, that is so prog. It's amazing.
I like that stuff. I like prog. I like prog derivatives. I think Muse was one of my first favorite bands as like a teenager, like 12-year-old, and they have they have a bit of that like prog kind of influence to them.
Especially like with the way that they do their synths and stuff like that. I can see that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not super long songs, but the synths and the production style is very like proggy. So I appreciate that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, this stuff is super cool. Their last album I got on CD at one point, and I'm really looking forward to this new project. I'm really glad this was actually a direct submission. If you are listening to this episode and you are interested in sending your music for a possibility to be featured on the podcast, you can send that to me at freshfindspod@gmail.com. But yeah, I'm so glad that they sent this to me early to check out because it is incredible.
Yeah, that was really good.
What do we have up next?
I think I've gone through the emo ones. Now I'm gonna get, just like you did with that prog, I'm gonna get a little bit less known. This is still a decently popular artist. And
we're starting out more cohesive and kind of branching out as we go.
Branching out a little bit. This is a still somewhat known artist in certain circles. This is a guy called Carter C.
Not one I'm familiar with, I can tell you that.
So they're a musician in I believe, if I remember correctly, it's either Portland or Seattle. I think it's Seattle. I think they're Seattle based, but they started this little like DIY record label up there, Friend's House Records, that I found Carter C, their stuff good few years back, just on SoundCloud or something, and
sure, I
really enjoyed it. And then I've listened to, I have it on one of their albums on cassette, even, that I ordered, and I've gone down the sort of, not necessarily rabbit hole, but it's funny because they have a little persona guy and they're a rabbit. But the other people on the Friend's House record like collective sort of thing, it's just a whole group of people around like Seattle making this like kind of like power pop, like indie jangle pop, sort of like stuff, and
Okay.
I think that more people. I don't think they're super active on this the DIY side of Twitter. So maybe I can introduce some people to their stuff. This is their song "Oh Sun," the one that I found from them first from 2022. Back in the day.
Oh, sun, why'd you wake me up from this dream? See, it's a Friday night. I felt your heart next to mine.
There's "Oh Sun," one of the early
That
Carter
is-
C songs.
Such a vibe.
Just started playing again. Money Sign Skip.
Yeah. Or Stomp.
Yeah, I think I
There we go.
accidentally. I think the first time it did work too.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, that's one of their earlier pieces that I found a few years back, and I really enjoyed.
I really like the kind of raw aesthetic of it, where it sounds very clearly like it sounds like a band recording live off the floor to me. Like just the way that it grooves.
I would not
And
be
then-
surprised. Their whole little collective has this certain sound like that I really like. Like it just sounds like people just playing music together, and they all like kind of do stuff together on each other's projects and stuff. Like they all live kind of locally.
I think that's super cool too.
Yeah, it's I don't know any of these people personally. I've talked with Carter C like years ago, and we were both aware of each other's music and both like some of each other's songs, but we're very far apart, kind of doing our own thing. But I'm a big fan. Like I said, I have their little cassette.
Oh, nice. That's sick.
with their little rabbit guy on it that I ordered a few years back when they released them first. It's one of the few cassettes I own, so I'm a big fan of that style.
I could see that sounding really good on cassette too. There's something about like that aesthetic and like the extra little bit of like saturation and like whatever else, like listening to it on a cassette that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's definitely like it fits to be on a cassette. I mean, it just sounds like that sort of like 90s, really like 90s DIY, like almost like jangle pop kind of like early sub pop like type stuff.
I was gonna say, being from like the Pacific Northwest also just makes so much sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they have such a unique little thing going on in sound. It's Carter's record label, I believe. Like I said, I'm not super like involved, so I could have like be giving wrong information
as far as like the ins and outs and everything.
But they are at the minimum, they are like very active and very much like a part of the decision making and the leadership and like, you know, kind of organization of their whole little like thing they got going on. So I do believe that they were the one that started it along with a few of their friends. But yeah, big fan of. If you just go to Carter C on Spotify, you'll see almost all the related artists are
also on that label.
Yeah, and then I'm there a little lower. If you click expand, I'm also there.
Oh, right on.
So we have a little bit of like crossover fan base going on, but yeah, they're very cool. I'm glad that there are still people like making these little like music collectives in the traditional sense. Like and making like these lo-fi, like their new stuff isn't as lo-fi, you know, their production is like cleaner, but especially this early stuff, it really has that spirit of that like early like sub pop type sound.
Yeah, it does a lot. It also kind of reminds me of like some of the stuff that came out like early on like polyvinyl a little bit too.
Yeah. I hear that as well too. Some of the like early like of Montreal, I believe that's polyvinyl as well. Correct.
That sounds right. I think so.
I think I ordered a polyvinyl like mystery box one time, and one of the vinyls, one of the vinyls I got was of Montreal. So I assume they are.
I also like. On this song specifically, I really like the vocal harmonies are really interesting. They kind of almost harken back to like a late era Beatles thing for me a little bit with like the way that they did their harmonies. Like there's just something about that I can't like tangibly be like that's what it is, but like there's something about the way that they did those harmonies that reminds me of like kind of that era of the Beatles, which I really like as well.
They're very warm and like inviting and very like it's just a very, very pleasing sort of like style in Carter's music that I've always enjoyed, and I've always come back to through the years since I discovered them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out more of that because that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot. They have a lot of like closer to traditional like DIY emo stuff, but it still has that same sort of energy to it, you know?
Yeah. All right, so my next song is gonna be from one of the kind of like bigger up and coming like DIY emo bands, at least to me, seemingly. It's from Mudwhale. And
I have heard that name.
Yeah, they just released a new album back in November that was called Humans Pretending to Be Human, which great title. I really like that a lot. But this song that I'm going to play is called Figure Out, and I think that it was one of the more different songs that was kind of like an album cut that seems like it probably wouldn't have gotten as much attention. So that's specifically why I chose this one, was to kind of highlight a song that less people would have likely heard off of the record. So let's play that right now.
that tempo slow down at the end was like butter. That was so smooth.
It really was, yeah.
Great. That was great. That's one of those songs I was listening to it and I just kind of forgot I was like listening to a song. I was just like kind of vibing so heavy and then
Yeah.
before I knew it, it was over. It has that sort of characteristic to it. It has that very like grounded, like really thick kind of guitar like tone.
I think something about the tempo of it too, being like a little bit slower and like kind of like you said, like the production is also just buttery smooth too. So I think that there's something about that almost like you forget like that you're paying attention to it. You're just like, oh,
You're just
so
like
nice.
you're just kind of like you're kind of just like out in the ether, you know, just kind of like letting it like wash over you. That real like, yeah, it's a little slower, a little thicker, heavier, like sounding. Very like it's real like crunchy as opposed to like distorted. It just has like a lot of like weight to it.
Yeah. They refer to themselves as emo grunge.
Yeah,
and I
it has
think that
that grunge
this kind of
production.
like this song specifically of the whole record really leans into that grunge side of things a lot more, which is why I kind of thought that it might be like a little bit underrepresented in the community, being that like everybody tends to like lean towards like the more emo type of stuff. So I was thinking that because this is a little bit different, a little bit grungier, maybe it would have not gotten quite as much attention, but I still thought it was super, super good.
Yeah, I was a fan of that as well. I need to make sure I Mud Whale. It sounds like Mud Whale. It sounds like that song would be by a band called Mud Whale. And the aesthetic is like on point.
I first saw them at Coachella last year. They played, I think they were the first band to play on day 2, if I recall, and was absolutely blown away by the couple of songs that I saw by the time I actually got there. But they were just incredible. And so when they started like releasing like new music, their singles were really good off of this too. And I like how they kind of blend the emo and the grunge a little bit, where like they have some of the more like shouty, screamy kind of vocals too, but then they also do like some of the more like mellow, like lower kind of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't even realize like that's why it kind of had that vibe to it, like that it was like kind of grungy, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, yeah, it definitely has that like heavy like grunge kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
I'd never really heard emo grunge. I was trying to think like I haven't really heard anything quite like that before, and I guess that's probably why I got so locked in, like in just kind of immediately was just letting it like hit me because it was like a new sort of dopamine rush, like hearing a new combination of sounds. That's
Yeah, I highly recommend this whole record. It's also kind of cool. So they did a vinyl run of this. And the thing that I think is super cool is they have a random color splatter for every single one. So none of them are going to look the same. They all have like these really cool kind of swirly patterns to them. I just think that it's so interesting doing like the random thing of like, here's the colors that kind of like make sense with the color palette and just they'll do whatever. I think that it looks super neat. Like I've been seeing people finally starting to get them in the mail and I'm like, all of these just look so different and so cool.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna tap into that probably tonight as well. Probably,
100%.
probably when I'm laying in bed. That's some great like laying in bed in the dark, the bed type music.
Such a vibe. So what do we have up next?
I'm gonna go with this one next. This is a bit even further out. This is by an artist. Her name is Doe Friends, and she put out this project very recently, I believe, in 2024. I discovered it really late 2024. Let me see when it came out. Very early 2024. Never mind.
So it came out really early. You discovered it really late.
I discovered it
gotcha.
late. Yeah.
Okay.
It came out January 5th, and I had not heard it, but a friend of mine recommended it to me, or I saw it on their like top album list, and I always trust her top album list. I listen to anything I see that she recommends. And the first track off this album is not the one I'm playing, but at the end of the song, there is a sample off of Star Trek TNG, which I love. And I
Okay.
almost used that same sample for one of my songs about the character Reginald Barclay off of
Okay.
TNG. And I have a version of one of my songs I put out about him that used the exact same sample from the episode that she used. But I ended up cutting out the bridge because the song was already like 5 minutes long. And the bridge would add like another 2 minutes of just like a vocal clip. And I was like, I don't really need that. It's kind of long already. I'm just gonna condense it. I always
Sure.
do that. I always try to like cut out some of the fluff of my songs to make them like just quicker, like, you know, easier like to digest like listens.
See, I think that makes sense. Like, to me, there's almost a difference between like if you're cutting something because you're like, oh, the song's too long, it's not going to perform well on social media or something like that, versus like, this just needs to be paced a little bit better. Let's just cut it out.
I didn't really add anything to it, and
No, I get that.
So I ended up cutting it out. But then I listened to the whole album, and I've listened to it quite a few times. All the tracks are very different on it. It's a bit like Weather Day, if you're familiar with them. At least
I'm not. No.
I would highly recommend it. But the album is not, but this song is closer to that kind of stuff. It is called, let me remember which one I picked. I Don't Know If You Hate or Love Me by Doe Friends. There's that.
All the little sound design stuff at the end is so cool.
Yeah, the sound design is super cool. I mistook that song for a different one. That's not the one that sounds like Weather Day.
Okay.
There's one that sounds kind of like Weather Day. That's more of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Debbie McCallion and the black dresses or black squares, like girls' rituals, like side of.
I'm not
Yeah,
familiar. No.
it's a completely other like little like scene that I'm also like really into. It's kind of like it's its own kind of little thing, but
yeah,
I'm real into that kind of stuff. It's very like it's like guitars still, but it's super like electronic kind of based, still using guitars and bass guitar and whatnot. But that sound design stuff is very prevalent in this sort of style, like manipulating these guitars with like filters and chops and making it sound like real digital.
That's the thing I was noticing is it's like it's distorted, but it sounds more like a bit crusher kind of like thing. Like it almost sounds like it would be like a guitar coming out of like a Game Boy or something.
Yeah, or like those old like keyboards that have like the built-in drums that you like you turn on, like those speakers.
And they're just super crunchy and kind of terrible sounding, but they're also kind of a vibe.
Yeah, they're kind of also like super cool, and like it sounds like you took like a microphone and captured that direct sound rather than like running it through something. It's really hard to like recreate that specific kind of like saturation, low bit rate. Like it's a very nostalgic and specific sound, I think, that resonates with a lot of people, and I enjoy stuff like that quite a bit. It's like lo-fi, but like a different type of lo-fi than like standard like lo-fi. It's like digital lo-fi, I would kind of call it.
Instead of analog lo-fi.
Yeah. Instead of like tape recorders and cheap mics and stuff. Like you say, it's like Game Boy sound chips and small like digital speakers on old like hardware that we grew up like listening to. Like
No, there is definitely like something very nostalgic about the sound of it. I think also just like musically, something about like the melodies and stuff of it just kind of feels like this very like kind of coming of age, like college era of your life type of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And like listening to the lyrics as well, it kind of makes sense. It is like very much about like kind of coming of age, like personal growth type of things, and wrestling with your personal relationships with people and things like that, which just again for the specific style of music feels like it makes so much sense.
Yeah. I just can't get enough of that kind of stuff. I cannot get enough of that like vibe and that like sound. Recently, especially, like I have recently gotten really into it, and I'm already super far along the album I'm working on, where it's not gonna sound like that, but it does make me want to incorporate some of that stuff into the next project. Because I mean, the one I'm working on is done basically. I just don't own a bass guitar, so I have to wait for my friend to record the bass line. Which, spoiler alert, the next song is going to be one of her songs to close it off.
Nice.
But I'll get to that after.
All right. So my final song of the evening was another direct submission. It's by a band called Zephyr, and they are from Denver, Colorado. They're a pretty traditional punk band in the way that they do their stuff. Their record label, Dumb Ghost Records, has been sending me each of their singles as they come out, and so I've kind of been watching the rollout, and this is the last single that they're releasing, which came out as of recording yesterday on the 10th. It's called Cry the Dawn, and the full album is, I believe, going to be coming out next week on the 17th. So this is Cry the Dawn by Zephyr.
Cry
Just some good old-fashioned punk rock right there.
Right on the money with that descriptor. That is some like a little bit of those like Titus Andronicus, a bit.
I'm not familiar with them specifically.
It's
No.
just the guitar riffs are that like it's not like not like hardcore, like punk, like just scream like thrash, like real hardcore, like violent.
More like traditional punk.
Yeah, that real like
Yeah.
real melodic kind of classic punk. A bit like the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX intro was partially reminded me of, which I love.
Okay.
I will sometimes just listen to that song because the
That
guitar
was my
solo is
shit
so
back in
good.
the day.
Oh yeah.
Also, just the original Yu-Gi-Oh anime opening is incredible. It's so different.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's-
I love that. I've been getting back on like a Yu-Gi-Oh kick recently. I never played it competitive or nothing, but like I just think it's like when I'm going to bed and I'm looking for something to watch. I've been watching this channel that like analyzes like duels from the anime and like points out like any misplays people made and stuff, which is really
That's wild.
really funny because you realize they play like terribly in the show for the sake of the plot. It's like, yeah, you could have won like right there, like based on the cards you had, like on turn 2. But,
It's like sports analysis, but for Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's like sports analysis for like a 30-year-old almost like TV show. I'm pretty sure.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that was
So this
really
is
good.
actually going to be their second album that they released. Their first album came out in 2020, and it was called Don't Worry About It. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the whole record because, like, it really is just like some no-nonsense, like,
Yeah, straight up.
it would be amazing to see live punk music. Like this
What was
is
their
like the
name?
type of shit that like
Hydrax
you.
or something.
What's that?
What was their name? You said like Hydrax or
Zephyr.
Zephyr. Very different words. but, like,
Zephr.
very similar vibes. There we go.
You're right. Yes,
Hydrax,
they do have
Zephyr,
very
like,
similar vibes.
I was like, yeah, it's some cool word. I remember it was like a really cool sounding word.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
a Z.
And like, man, they just, like I said, it feels like it would be a great band to see live.
Yeah, I would
just
I
like
would
the
just
energy
watch-
of it would just be incredible. You just go to like a dive bar or something like that, and they're just rocking the fuck out.
Just get a cheap beer and drink it, and go there with your buddies, and dance.
That's the vibe.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That is the perfect music to just like kind of just like let loose a little bit too. Just it's not trying to take itself like super seriously or try to like you need to sit and analyze this. Like no, you just need to like listen to it and like dance and like have fun and like it sounds cool. It's like a Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
Like Hot Wheels, like fire. Flame t-shirts and hair gels and stuff. Like it's just awesome. It's just cool stuff. It's classic. Like,
and like you said, like the type of band to like have fun too. Like this isn't hardcore. You're not gonna get crowd killed to this or anything.
Yeah.
But like
gather around a little bit and, like,
it's got the
around.
energy. It's heavy. Also, I like that this song is. I mean, it has lyrics, but it's kind of just like a guitar jam song because like it's got just the same repeated lyrics over and over just a couple times, and the majority of the song is just a guitar jam. It's just so fun.
I love it. I had to make sure I wrote that one down too because I'll listen to it. I'll get in moods where I want to listen to stuff exactly like that. Normally when I'm like hanging out with friends and we're in the car like going somewhere to do something fun.
Yeah.
Like I'll put that stuff on like pretty regularly, so I could see myself coming back to that.
Hype music, basically.
Yeah, free game music.
Yeah. So, and again, the whole album comes out next week. So before this episode even comes out, so you can check out the whole thing. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm always looking for new stuff to listen to. Recently. I've been listening to a lot. I listen to a lot of new stuff. I've been listening to a lot of jazz recently and going back to like old stuff I missed. I've been getting real into Archers of Loaf the last few weeks.
Okay.
That I somewhat knew, but like I'm getting deeper into them. It's real fun stuff.
Nice.
This is another thing to add to my repertoire.
All right. So how are we ending the episode off?
All right. So this next song it's by a very special person. Her name is Lilac Roadkill. Ellie is her name, and she is a very good friend of mine. And also, she is the bass player on my recent album. All the bass lines are her. Like I said, I don't own a bass. So she wrote all the bass parts to Days Become Years, and she did such a great job because the bass lines are like really good. They're not what I would have done. They're way better than I could have ever played. She's an incredibly talented musician. She gave me mix notes for the album too. I mixed it myself, but she gave me a lot of very detailed notes on things that I could fix, on places I could.
Having a separate set of ears is so crucial to actually like having a good mix,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you can get so in your head, especially if it's your own music, because you can like even little things like, it's not a bad performance, but there's this one little thing that I don't like about it, and so you're just like gonna like bury it or something like
Yeah,
that, and they're like, no, bring that out a little.
It helped a lot. I mean, there was 2 whole pages of super detailed notes she sent me of like frequency numbers and like specific things I could try to.
Oh wow,
She
like
is
really technical.
She is
Okay.
like one of the most talented people I know musically. Like honestly, she's just a great guitarist, like great songwriter. She's in Philadelphia and does stuff up there in the
Okay.
Philly scene. But yeah, definitely more people should check her out because she, especially if you liked the album, she had a huge part in it. Throughout the production process, she was, there on my Discord server, hanging out after recording. We'd like play games and stuff together with the rest of our friends. And
Hell yeah.
I've visited her and her friends up in Philly. Super cool person, super talented musician. And this is one of her more recent tracks, a little more experimental kind of thing she did that I think she killed it on. This one is called With, off of her most recent little split called Without, where the other song is called Out. And here's the opening. There is With by Lilac Roadkill. So talented. She is such a great like songwriter, music theory wise, lyric wise. Like
I was specifically gonna mention like the music theory thing, like the way that like the use of like the breakbeat kind of like drum and bass almost type of thing is really neat in this context. But like the way that breakbeat kind of goes along with the piano doing the dun 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 dun. The way that those rhythms interact is like a really weird like polyrhythm thing that like it took my mind a little while to like wrap my head around it, but it's just really neat the way that those two play off of each
exactly.
other.
It's like kind of like disjointed at first, and it kind of like comes together as it keeps going, as like more elements kind of like solidify the like rhythm and the pulse of everything. It all like fits together like a little puzzle piece. She made this specifically to make a song with no guitar. There's no guitar in this song at all.
Okay, sure.
And she's normally a guitar player as well, incredible guitar player and bassist, but she wanted to write this EP without using any guitar. There's like samples of like Pokemon moves a lot of the drums like layered, and these effects are like sound,
like the Game Boy like kind of like sound effects.
I think they're from. I think she used Black and White. I think, or maybe Platinum, but I have the same one that I used for some of my songs as well. I layered some of my drums with some of these like some of the moves have like a nice like white noise kind of slap, and I use some of those.
Yeah,
the sound design is very cool in a lot of those like DS Pokemon games. So like she used a lot of that, and I just remember her sending it like back and forth with me, and I was telling her like, yeah, this is coming along like incredibly. She is more people should check out her stuff. She has like 2 albums. She does stuff live with Philly, and she's contributed a lot of instruments and instrumentals mixing and stuff to a lot of people. There's another of my friends, Kelly, Birds Fear Death. She does the mixing and mastering for her as well, and her girlfriend also play music together in a band, or not in the same band up there, but Ellie will contribute stuff to her girlfriend's band as well. Yeah, she's very talented, and has especially if you like the recent album I put out, I mean, like, definitely check out more of her stuff, because she is one of the most knowledgeable people about music that I like have met, really.
The other thing that I think is really interesting about this is it kind of reminds me of like anime music a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it is about it exactly, if it's like the phrasing or like what it is, but there's something that just like, it gives me anime end credits like vibes.
I think a lot of it might be. So I know that in a lot of like Japanese type chord progressions, they tend to use a lot more of a chord variety, whereas like a lot of like Western music is kind of rooted around like 4 or sometimes 3, and even so like 4 or 5 like different basic chords, where in a lot of her music, because she knows like just this ridiculous amount of like music theory, I mean, she can use all of these like sort of jazz and like classical like type chord structures and progressions.
See, that was the other thing I was going to say, is it kind of is like a like jazz fusion type of vibe too.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I'm not just because she's like one of my best friends, but like even before we were super close. Like I thought her music was always like super underrated. I mean, she's sitting at like 150 to 200 monthly listeners on Spotify. And I think that's crazy because of just like how like talented she is. Like, I think more people should like hear her stuff.
Oh, 100%. It is really, really cool. And I want to check out way more of this, because it's just like, again, it's such a like fresh and interesting sonic palette to put together. And it works in a really strange and good way. I like it a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Cannot say enough good things about her and her music and just her as a person.
All right. This has been a good episode. I had a really good time on this
one.
Me too.
It was very fun.
I really liked getting to like geek out about like production and stuff like that a little bit more, just because I don't get to do that quite as often. That was really fun.
I'm a huge fan of geeking out about production.
Is there anything else specifically that you wanted to either mention one more time or that we forgot to touch on when we did the first part of the episode that you want to bring up now before we sign off for the end of the episode?
I don't think necessarily forgot to touch on. I have a new project coming out to be determined. It's done basically. It has like
Except for bass.
10 songs right now, except for bass, because she's a busy person. She has a lot going on in real life. She's not like terminally online like I am. So that's gonna be coming out soon. Maybe there'll be a single. Maybe it'll be more than 10 songs because since I'm waiting, I'm also still writing songs and trying to write. There's a few of them I still need to write lyrics for, but like 8 of the 10 are like completely done except for bass and the final mix and master. But yeah, that will be coming out very soon. I don't typically do the like traditional like promotion single, like any of that sort of
the whole release rollout,
because I feel like a lot of my fan base is pretty like invested, and they're pretty like I have this same group of people that I don't have like a huge listener base, but I get like a pretty good amount of consistent plays by like a dedicated sort of group of people. So normally I just release it when it's ready and people find it and kind of do the word of mouth, the purest form of DIY
for sure
of release, just release it, and the people who like it, who believe in your work, will the community will share it itself. But that is about it. Just making sure people know I'm still active and working on another thing this soon after the last one. I try to be very prolific. I try to put out a few things a year if I can, a few full albums, maybe an EP, because I don't do anything else but record music. And everyone else should do music as well. If you haven't, I always like to end things off anytime I do any sort of public thing. If you like my music or anyone else's music, really, you can just put out your own too. And people, like, some people will hear it eventually. And if people don't hear it, you just put out another one. And then you just, like, everyone can put out music and, like, get, like, some fans. It's not nearly as hard. It's not nearly as hard to do. And even just having, like, a few people who... It's so easy to get caught up in the numbers game, but just having a few people who like the music you make and believe in you and want to hear more and like let you know that like the art you have made like has affected them emotionally is such a great feeling that you cannot understand just by like listening. Like until you create something and you hear someone say that the thing that you put your like emotions and your time and energy into has made somebody else's life like measurably better for having heard it, it is the most rewarding thing you could possibly experience, and I think it will make the entire rest of your life better. So if you like my songs or anyone else's, any band, get active and make your own project as well. Learn an instrument, or even just get a DAW by legal or other means. If you'll find it somewhere, find it on the side of the road somewhere. It fell off a truck. They'd be doing that sometimes.
Who knows?
There's so many there's so many places you can find them. But just put some sort of song or any sort of art, draw or make a song or write or make videos. It's so important to create and not just to listen. That is what I
100%.
That is what I want to end off everything on, is make art however you can. If that's all that you do, find a way to make something, and you will be rewarded for it more than you could know.
I like that. And also be sure to listen to Days Become Years and For Once in My Life. This has been the Fresh Finds Podcast, the show about discovering new music with good people.
Fresh.